How we doing, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. I am your host, Richie. Oh boy, disappointed to say the least in the Mother's Day massacre, as I've seen some media outlets call it yesterday. The New York Knickerbockers look like they might be on the inch of imploding after such a promising start in this series, as they take quite the drubbing. 121-89 loss to the rival Indiana Pacers. And the series is now squared at 2-2. I don't think it's necessarily alarming that, every home team has won every game in the series so far. It's actually quite common percentage-wise that happens in the second round. It happens a lot of times in the third round as well. I think what's most problematic for my beloved New York Knicks right now is the war of attrition winning. It seems that, during the course of the season, amongst us Knick fans, a lot of media outlets, people who cover the NBA and have decent amount of reputability, have all said that Tom Thibodeau has basically just kind of refused to embrace rest minutes. And I do believe that when you have the misfortune of having too many guys drop at the most critical times, whether it's Bogdanovich, whether it's your backup center Mitch Robinson, and now sadly OG Anunoby, who is the prime addition to this team that was made earlier in the season. Right now, your point guard Jalen Brunson is struggling. He is also injured. And it just seems like the New York Knicks are in a bad place. Truly in a bad place. And I believe this is the type of series that if things don't get rectified and if the Knicks do not find a way to get back into this, it could be the head of Tom Thibodeau. While I think Thibodeau is a good basketball coach and definitely understands his X's and O's and is also a very good motivator, if you look at his track record going back to his years in Chicago, many would suggest that he injured and overworked their big three in Derrick Rose, Carlos Boozer, Joakim Noah. Now you fast forward to his Knick run, and former Chicago Bull, who was a lead cast member of this team a couple of years ago, Mr. Derrick Rose, once again, the injuries. We've seen it with Anunoby during the season. He missed a substantial amount of time. And I think the most alarming thing about the absence of Anunoby and why he might be the most important person that you cannot afford to not have readily available for the remainder of the series is that with him, the Knicks have a damn near 90% winning percentage. I don't believe they've even lost 5 games with OG in the lineup or with OG in the rotation. Without him, they're under a 500. And, I keep going back to game 3 as a game that I believe the Knicks absolutely had to win. When you got the kind of contribution that you did from Dante DiVincenzo having a career-type game, and when your backup point guard Alec Burks brings a nice contribution off the bench, you can't bank on those two particular players having comparable nights again in this series. And that losing that game in the fashion they did really left the door open for Indy to get back in this series. But the meat and crust of it, and I will not talk about injuries further, the Indiana Pacers outworked the New York Knicks yesterday from the second the ball was tipped off. They shot the ball better. They had a playoff energy that the Knicks were not even in the stratosphere of matching. And quite frankly, the Knicks just looked like they had dead legs. And to my previous point, I do believe that is a reflection of the philosophy of Tom Thibodeau. And I said this going into the playoffs. I said it towards the end of the regular season. The opportunity that the Knicks were presented this year as they last day of the year snuck the 2 seed with Milwaukee, who was a big favorite going into the playoffs, dying early. A team like Miami, who's usually a big playoff fixture, not having their kind of year. I think this is a golden opportunity for the Knicks to make the ECF, and I will say this. Anything less than an Eastern Conference appearance in the championship round of the Eastern Conference would be deemed a failure. And that's why I do believe that's similar to what the New York Rangers did last year with firing their coach, although they were constantly, perpetually in the playoffs. Now they're potentially in the midst of a Stanley Cup run. Knicks have a nice future ahead of them. Leon Rose has done a great job shaping this roster responsibly. But I do believe that Coach Thibodeau has put a little too much on his guys. I mean, Jalen Brunson is laboring. And, he has a great heart. He has a great heart for these playoffs. But when you can't even get into your offense until 10 seconds, 8 seconds left on the shot clock, it's not a recipe for winning. And when Jalen's not right on that level, I think that's when some of the warts, so to speak, come out in this Knicks offense, where you're seeing guys like DiVincenzo and others having massive issues creating their own shots. It eerily reminds me of what happened to this team in 1999 when Patrick Ewing tore his Achilles, Latrell had the bad metatarsal, LJ had the back, and they were in the NBA Finals. Game 5 will tell the story. I would like to think that MSG crowd will help elevate the Knicks. I don't see any possible way how the Knicks come out as flat as they did. And us as fans, anyone who covers sports, particularly in the playoffs or even in the regular season for that matter, we all are guilty of having a propensity for overreacting to bad losses. But I must admit, in such a critical game, to see the Knicks look that hapless and that helpless, it's very scary right now when they essentially need to win 2 of the next 3 to punch their ticket to the Eastern Conference Finals. The Celtics will be looking to take a commanding 3-1 lead and really just put the stamp on that series, put it away, so to speak. And the Knicks right now, it's undeniably a little depressing when you see how quick their fortunes have turned. Going into these playoffs, I do believe that, Thibodeau seeing what he had in that Nova trio and it being revealed on a bigger level doesn't happen if Julius Randle is available. But it's funny how things change. A year ago, after a disappointing playoff outcome against the Miami Heat, a lot of New York Knicks fans were ready to run Julius Randle out of town. Now you fast forward to this particular year and not having his services for any of the games in these playoffs. And it's a different tune. Knicks fans legitimately wish that they did have a Julius Randle. Bogdanovich, his shooting prowess, his basketball acumen is missed. Mitch Robinson, in my opinion, re-aggravated that injury with the controversial non-call for a toss-out on Joel Embiid. I have pretty passionate feelings about what happened there and why I think it was so unacceptable. But the bottom line here is, going into tomorrow, the New York Knicks absolutely have to play their best game of the year. They have to dig deep. They're going to get the support from the crowd. That place is going to be a madhouse. And I do believe the Knicks are a different animal when they play in Madison Square Garden. But the bottom line here is that if the New York Knicks do not get off to a quick start and are not able to play their brand of basketball, next time they go to New York after Game 5 will be to clean out their lockers and get ready for a little bit of a long summer. I have to give the Indiana Pacers all the credit in the world. They're not taking the initial losses to the heart. They feel that they've been competing. They feel like they've been in this series from jump. And I do believe it's a legitimate reason why they may very well win this series. On a lot of metrics, I still think it's a 50-50. One blowout doesn't define your season nor define you as a team. But to see that kind of lack of energy in a swing game like that, it's alarming, to say the least. And it's even more alarming when it happens to be your team. I try to do my best to be fair and bring what I see. And what I see is Jalen Brunson essentially having one bad wheel and having a lot of issues getting the Knicks into the flow of their offense. And on the other side of the ball, on the other side of the court, defensively, Brunson, it's kind of like a domino effect. He's having issues getting over on offense. Indiana is exploiting the Knicks' lack of overall athleticism right now. And what you lose with a guy like OG Anunoby is outside of Jalen Brunson, he may very well be the only other player on this Knicks roster that has the ability to create his own shots. You know, DiVincenzo is a guy that I have a lot of respect for, as is Josh Hart, but those are guys that kind of need the offense to come to them. They're not necessarily just going to go out and take their own shots. I mean, DiVincenzo is a sniper from downtown, and that was the other thing. The Knicks could not afford to shoot the ball as bad as they did and think that they were going to have an opportunity of winning. It was a historical loss in terms of how bad it was. I could honestly tell you that I've been watching the NBA since I was probably like 9 years old, 8 years old. And I don't think I've ever made a confirmed stance that 6 games into a playoff game, it was over. But that is how I felt watching this game yesterday. The next couple of nights is going to be huge for not just this season, but for the immediate future of the New York Knicks. Because if they, let's say they lose 4-2 and don't even win another game in the series, if they show a lack of intensity and a lack of playoff fluidity, I do believe Tom Thibodeau is going to pay the ultimate price and get canned, and the Knicks are going to be looking for a new coach. Will it be a promotion for Jalen Brunson's father? I don't want to get that far ahead, but I do believe that in today's NBA, you cannot be that ignorant to rest minutes, just like in today's MLB, you can't be ignorant to analytics. It's going to be a very, very interesting few days around the league and definitely in New York City. Mike Zappi, off air, has been in my ear about this. We talked about the greatness of Nikola Jokic as one of the all-time great big men, centers, in the history of the NBA, not just in today's times. To go down 0-2 as a defending world champion and to not just go down 0-2, but to kind of get spanked on your home floor, to come back into a hostile environment and to square it up against arguably the best player in the NBA today in Anthony Edwards and a very talented Minnesota Timberwolves team. You just can't say enough about the resolve and truly the heart of a champion. And that's what the Denver Nuggets really showed. Now it's a 3-game series. It's a best of 3. And unlike the fortune that the Knicks have, at least having 2 of the next 3 at home, the issue here for Minnesota is now you got to go back to Denver. And the law of averages says a home team has to start winning one of these games. It is incredibly rare when you can continue to have a series where the home team doesn't take a stance. And I think by allowing Denver to get back in it, it's truly remarkable. And the thing about Jokic and his greatness here is that I believe for the first couple of games, the Minnesota Timberwolves really were able to give him so many different looks on defense and frustrate him. Similar to how I mentioned that the Knicks run through Brunson, even though he's not a point guard, the offense and just the way they move still moves through Jokic. He's a very versatile player that, in addition to being a hell of a scorer and a hell of an athlete around the rim, he contributes in pretty much every statistical value possible. And that's what opens it up for the second and third options for this Denver Nuggets team. Initially, going into this series, I did pick the Nuggets to win it. I believe it was in 7 that I said. After going down 2-0, winning 1, I did pick the Minnesota Timberwolves to go up 3-1 yesterday. That did not happen. My finals prediction going into these playoffs was Nuggets 4, I believe, to Boston's 2 or 3. I got to double check that, but I got the Nuggets winning the NBA Finals. Right now, I got to stick with my original pick. 10 hours ago, 15 hours ago, 30 hours ago, I would have said Minnesota's going to win this series. The one thing that I do stand firm on, whoever wins this series is going to win the NBA Finals. But right now, it looks like the Denver Nuggets really have turned it around. And now this comes down to the kind of thing where they come back from 0-2, and I'm speaking on Zappy's behalf here because he's the one who's really been driving this home. You have no other choice but to start truly including Jokic into that next tier of all-time center. I still feel a little uncomfortable on certain metrics, and I'm going to give you one of the main ones. Yeah, okay, you're coming back from 0-2. That's exceptional. That's awesome. Who are the Minnesota Timberwolves and what is their winning history and lineage? We know Anthony Edwards is a boss. We know that he's a phenomenal player. But honestly, Zappy, here on the air, that would be my one rebuttal to you. While you make a great point, they're not beating an established championship team. They're beating a young team that's ascending that might be maybe a year ahead of schedule. But it's going to be so very interesting to see how this all plays out. And, you got the Dallas Mavericks in the other series playing a youthful OKC team that it looks like the veteran leadership is outweighing the young guns, the young lions that are coming up. And that's a trend that I feel that we've been seeing in some of these NBA playoffs. Maybe not so much in this Knicks series. I think in the Knicks series, it's just more of a war of attrition that's going awry. Boston Celtics, still got to say undeniably, without really thinking too hard about it, have got to be the absolute best team in the Eastern Conference. But I can still not quite wrap my head around how a team that on so many people's opinions are a shoo-in to make the NBA Finals, how are they still struggling this mightily at home? I believe that's been driven up to the last 30 or 31 games now. They're either 15-15, 15 or 16, something in that area. For them to be that piss poor at home in the playoffs, I just can't wrap my head around. I don't think it's going to hurt them in a series against a team like Cleveland or even against whoever wins the Pacers and Knicks series, because the winner of the Pacers and Knicks will be fortunate to win a game against the Celtics. But the Celtics, we're not playing well at home, I think could really hurt them is in the final round if they run into a Denver or a Minnesota. Dare I say a Dallas? I think Dallas is a little bit of a long shot. I don't think that the ideal matchup for Dallas would be the Denver Nuggets. I did have Dallas making the Western Finals, though, and I did have them knocking out the top-seeded Oklahoma City Thunder. To be continued. Stay tuned. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this all plays out. Boston Bruins are on a bit of a banana peel. They are down 3-1 to the team that crushed their dreams last year in the Florida Panthers, a team that ruined literally the greatest season of regular season hockey that carried over into the playoffs, beat the Bees 3-1 in Boston in just shocking fashion. I don't feel completely comfortable counting out the Bruins, although they do have to make the trip down south in a must-win game. If these NHL playoffs has shown me anything over the course of time is to expect the unexpected. And I do believe that in this case, there can be a potential surprise. I, going into this, pick the Panthers in 7. And if they don't get the job done game 5, it still may go 7. Panthers are going to win this series. I got my New York Rangers taking care of business tonight and finishing the deal with the Carolina Hurricanes. And I got to say, this is one of the more strange series that I've seen in a very long time, because every game has been decided by a goal. So when I look at 3-1, I don't have that feeling of domination. I think the Rangers, during the course of this long hockey season, have shown a comfort level of playing in those kind of nail-biting scenarios, and they are coming out on top more often than not. They were the last team to lose a playoff game in this playoff bracket. The last team in the NHL to lose a playoff game was the Rangers in a game that they could have very well won. But one thing that keeps me humble as a Ranger fan and knows how difficult it is to win in this very complex tournament known as the Stanley Cup, the Stanley Cup playoffs, is that it really is a game of a couple of plays. I mean, I'm sure you could say that about football too, maybe even on the diamond. But the Canes and Rangers, this series is a lot closer than people are realizing. And I got to give Rod Brind'Amour and his guys credit for coming back in a game where they're already down 3. That is not the easiest task to keep your guys motivated when you essentially are coming off back-to-back heartbreakers. And then they dole the Rangers a little return in that regard. But I think the New York Rangers are built for this. I said it many times during the course of the year that similar to what I'm suggesting the other Garden team do, I think making the coaching change made all the difference. I think the talent has always been there, and I think now he's getting the absolute most out of that and playing the right lines at the right times. There's a science to it. It's not just throw a bunch of talented people out there and, hope for the best. And I think that Peter Laviolette has just been truly exceptional. Truly exceptional. And I believe that this New York Rangers team is the best in hockey. But I humbly say that I expect a fight tonight. And I don't think this time of the hockey season anything should be expected to come easy. It's a very grueling, intense tournament. And there's a big reason why so many teams that win the President's Cup don't end up winning the President's Trophy, don't end up winning the Stanley Cup. And it speaks on the level of competition of the second season that is the NHL playoffs. It is one of the most unpredictable tournaments outside of March Madness is the NHL playoffs. New York Yankees taking 2 out of 3 against the Tampa Bay Rays. Clark Schmidt, I want to make a shout out to him. If he continues to pitch at this level, I think he's going to get a nice little contract. One particular Yankee that I don't think is going to be back next year. There's a couple, but just a little bit of a early season hot take, and I don't think it's that much of a hot take. Gleyber Torres, I think at this juncture of the year, he's not going to get any better. And I think that there's going to be a little bit of a different looking infield and infield depth next year. DJ LeMahieu, we'll see when he comes back, but he's on the wrong side of his age. Anthony Rizzo at this point, similar to a Brett Gardner. I feel that he is a year-to-year guy right now. And I believe that he will be a Yankee as long as the Yankees don't find a more suitable replacement to play first base. Because I think the value that Rizzo brings, although he is not the Rizzo that he was in Chicago, is that for so many years, the Yankees had a gaping hole at first base where in previous years, the Mattinglys, the Martinezes, the Teixeiras, even a guy like a Giambi, those dudes man down first and you always know what you had there. But then you go into the next era of Yankee baseball prior to Rizzo being traded for. And I believe that that was something that we were not used to seeing. Just a lot of chaos at first base. And with the grand responsibility for the New York Yankees to figure out how to keep Juan Soto, who has been such a huge part of the great start that this team has had, being neck and neck with, I think, most people's favorites to be a World Series candidate, the Baltimore Orioles. And without your ace, who should be coming back, I would hope, within the next month, talking about Garrett Cole. That's another thing in the offseason. The Yankees, on most levels, have the leverage in that Cole situation, but they got to find out how the opt-out works. They got to add another year to that. There's some other specifics that need to go down. But Clark Schmidt, his performance lately has been encouraging. I think Nestor Cortez has done a decent job at turning things around. Carlos Rodon has been a lot better, and that's been a huge thing. If there's a critique with the starters, Marcus Stroman hasn't been bad, but similar to Luis Severino in previous years, he has been susceptible to that one bad inning that turns a potential win into an ultimate loss. But it's year one. We'll see how it goes. This is not his first go-around in New York. As we know, he didn't have the best finish with the Mets in terms of a lot of controversy regarding how he felt about his position with the organization and things that were even deeper than that. NFL schedule release coming May 15th. We are definitely looking forward to that. And that's where I think a lot of us are just going to be starting to plan where we're going. What games are we going to be attending? Best piece of advice that I could give anybody: try not to overreact and buy tickets immediately. I know a lot of people do that, but that's where they get you at the highest potential price. Take your time, plan it up. There's always tickets to be had as the games get closer. It's trying to save people a couple of bucks here and there. Um, to the ladies, I just wanted to say that I hope you all had a satisfying, solid Mother's Day. I made my rounds. I did my absolute best to see all of my people, with certain people coming in and out of town, and appeasing the moms in my life, doing my best. And, one thing that we do not get more of is time. And I implore all of you to make it work, make it count, and do your best to maximize your time, because that's one thing that sadly we never get back is time. And speaking of time, it's about that time to sign off of here. And speaking of time, it's time that the New York Knicks dig deep and find a way to beat their hated rivals, the Indiana Pacers, regardless of the beating. I will be locked in tomorrow. And on the flip side, Knicks and Knicks fans, there is light at the end of the tunnel, because no matter how this plays out, the Knicks have a very good window to win an NBA championship in the next few years. And I can't remember the last time I said that and actually meant it. Have a great day, everyone, and a great, prosperous, and hopefully a safe week. We will be back soon with announcements to come. I'm out.